sell postcards for $1.50. Note cards. That's it. So, thank you very much, Edith. Do you, the lights are good for you?
I don't know, can they see? Can you see the screen okay, or would you like it dimmer?
I'm this one. She's the other side.
Oh,
Okay.
I have to press the button.
Okay, all right. I'm a little sister, Edith Kilby Bacon, okay? I'm a retired educator, mainly kindergarten teacher, and my mother, stepmother, grandmother, great-grandmother, gosh, they keep having children, and gardener, basket weaver, what else do I do?
You
Cook?
can do anything.
Okay, cook, all right, whatever. I was born on, well, we were both, I was born on the dairy farm in the house, and we went to the hospital to be born, okay? But, and lived in Harford County, Maryland for the first 12 years of my life, and then moved to a larger dairy farm in Cecil County. So, and I've lived in Cecil County most of my life since, so.
What possessed you to do this?
Oh, that's right, I was supposed to say why I did this. Okay, I think a lot of it was natural curiosity. I had a friend, Linda, who letterboxed and taught me how to letterbox, which you go out and you find, you have directions to find treasures, and then you stamp the journal, and then you stamp your journal, and blah, blah, blah. And it was, that's what got me started finding some of the Mason-Dixon markers. And then I graduated, my friend Vicky geocached, and so I graduated to the technically superior geocaching, which is finding treasures with GPS and going around and finding these treasures and recording them online and etc. And I'm a little ADHD, so I don't like to sit still particularly, so it helped with that, you know, getting out. It was, you know, an avoidance technique. I didn't want to do anything in the house. And so, my mother had a natural curiosity too, and I think it's sort of genetic, so.
But you could make a plan. I couldn't make the plan. My name's Emily Kilby. As you can see, I have no additional name. I'm the founding old maid, no children, none of that stuff. But my sister, who is 5 years younger than I am, had this idea, and I went along for the ride. But I had, in my life, I've been a teacher, a graduate student, a teacher again, a farm worker. I worked on the home farm, milking cows and doing that kind of stuff for about 8 years, and I was hired to be a writer for a horse magazine, and it just started, and it was Equus magazine, and for the next 24 years I worked with the magazine and continued to do a lot of farm work for a great deal of the time. So I retired, I had become the executive editor for some years, and then I retired and worked in an old age place so that I could make money and have insurance without having to think. And that didn't last too long. And then finally I did work for a nonprofit organization for 4 years and retired too young. And moved back to Cecil County. I'd been in Frederick County, Maryland for a while. So I came to Cecil County and ended up living right next to Fair Hill. And I knew Fair Hill because of the horse activities, of course. But once I started hiking in there with my dogs, I kept coming across foundations and things that I kept saying, well, there used to be something here, what is it? And I would go ask my neighbor, who was a park ranger at the time, and she didn't know what it was. And I went to the Historical Society, and they had no information about Fair Hill or any of these things. And fortunately, my mother had a giant martinet map, which was from 1855, and it had all the farms' names. And I looked at it and I said, good heavens, look at all these buildings that are within the Fair Hill area. And that started me off. And I have become the expert in Fair Hill history because nobody else had ever done it before. I do have a Facebook page called Forgotten Fair Hill, so if any of you do Facebook, you can join that, and if I ever get back to it, I will put some more information about the history. I get sidetracked by things like this. So anyway, my sister said she wanted to see all the markers. I said, fine with me, so I just tagged along. She did all the thinking and the planning and finding, which she'll tell you about after I finish my.
But Emily had the sense of direction.
I do. Plus I can look at a place and I say, I bet that's where a geocache is. And she would never do that. She would try to use this thing. All right, so, I'm going to give you the history part, and I've cut it down really a lot. I used to have a lot more until Bob looked at me the other day and said, it's not gonna be more than an hour, is it? I said, oh, okay. So, here we go. Our mission, as Edith said, was to go to all 23 Mason-Dixon markers along the top of Cecil County, which includes most of, or a lot of your county as well, and a little bit of Lancaster County. You need to move up to this front seat. Would you like to move up to this front seat? You can't see the screen very good. So that was our goal, but the original mission, of course, was to have the border between two colonial grants finally defined. And that this is the map that was drawn by, I think it was Mason did the drawing, the map thing, maybe it was Dixon, after they had finally finished their survey of Cecil County. So this is the same space as in that previous picture, but in a more historic look. So this was the final plan that they submitted after they had done their survey. So the reason the survey needed to be done was that in Maryland is the older state. And Cecilius Calvert had received his grant for Maryland in 1632. And the original grant said it went to the 40th parallel and on the north and to the Delaware Bay on the east and to the Potomac River on the west. So that's why Maryland has that jaggedy western border, because it's following the Potomac River. So almost 50 years later, along comes Penn. And he got his grant in 1681 from Charles II or somebody like that. I can't keep my king straight. And his grant allowed him to have supposedly a lot more of the land that had already been granted to Cecil Calvert. So that's where the problem arose. And he ended up with the half of the Delmarva Peninsula, as you know, which is now Delaware, and all of that vast Pennsylvania far above. But along the northern border, the western line, there was a lot of contention. In fact, one of our own ancestors, our sixth great-grandfather Long, was one of the people who was in the question zone there near Rising Sun, where the Nottingham lots were. And Penn had granted the Nottingham lots to his followers, and yet that was part of Calvert's property, which was finally determined. But our own great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather, was one of the people whose land was being questioned as being, it should be part of Pennsylvania. So at any rate, you have a little touch there. It took forever for them to figure out to solve these boundary problems. And that was because so many different things had to be considered. Oh, I can look at my own screen. Because one grant would say the southern three counties had to have that 12-mile arc measured from the courthouse steeple in Newcastle. There had to be the 12-mile circle drawn up there. Let's see, I think I can show you. Can you see my cursor? There's my little cursor. Okay, here we go. I can't see it very well. There we go. So there's the 12-mile circle has to be made, and that was actually determined, whoops, go back. That was determined first of all the boundaries lines. So that 12-mile circle, and it ended up being very accurate. When it was later surveyed, it was fine. The next part that had to be considered was the transpeninsular line down at the bottom, where, oh, I've lost my cursor again. I need a pointer that I can point it there. Well, you can read it. The transpeninsular line was to go from Cape Henlopen over to the Chesapeake Bay, and then the midpoint had to be determined, and that was to be the dividing line, or to start the dividing line up through the Delmarva Peninsula. And that was determined in 1751. That wasn't too hard, although it was swampy and messy to do. But the trouble is if you have a circle up at the top and you have a straight line coming up, you have to make them meet somehow. It's a little hard. So that was a tricky thing too. That was not, and it was Mason and Dixon who determined this tangent line, it's called, that went up from the midpoint down there, and that was determined finally in surveyed in 1763. The real trick was up there in the corner. Where's my cursor? Come back, cursor. Where the circle and the square were to meet. And the tangent line had to meet the circle at a certain point, and then you had to go due north from that point on the circle to what would be the corner of the two states, or two colonies, that had to meet at a point 15 miles south of the southernmost town house in Philadelphia. Totally complex. Of course, if you were 15 miles south of the southernmost dwelling in Philadelphia, you'd end up in New Jersey. So you had to go west 15 miles south of that point, then drop down 15 miles to the west. So at any rate, eventually Edith Ann will show you the points that are the monuments that show all these different things. But all these pieces had to be put together to everybody's satisfaction. So it took quite a time to do it, and it took some very talented people. By the way, the original survey, I wanted to point out the dates here. So the 1701 was the circle was completed, surveyed properly. 1751, the transpeninsular line. But then it took our friends Mason and Dixon to do the tangent line, the 15-mile south line, and finally the due west line, which took 3 seasons. And it wasn't every minute of every year, every one of those 3 years. It was only during the seasons that they could actually be out surveying. So they covered 231 miles across a lot of wilderness during those 3 seasons, summer and early fall. And it just astonishes me because we took a lot longer to do that in just our little county. But it's just a marvelous thing. And if there's a fellow over there who is a surveyor, who is also a Mason-Dixon scholar. If you have questions about how they did this survey, please go talk to David Porter. Raise your hand, David. He will explain how they looked at the stars and they figured out where they were on the face of the earth and how they kept going absolutely due west. It's beyond my comprehension. But at any rate, this is where they ended up. And the reason I put these pictures up is because the arrows point to the 1768 map drawn up there. That's pointing to the point where they stopped surveying because the Indians were getting a little restless out there. You notice they had crossed the warpath. You see that on the side, on the map. But that is the actual, overhead shot of the spot that they stopped. And it's just astonishing me how accurate that hand-drawn map is, all calculated by the stars and all that stuff. How close it is to reality today. And they went as far as Blacksville, that's the name of the town, Blacksville, West Virginia. And there's a Mason-Dixon highway out there, so if you want to do the whole thing, you can take a trip and see how rugged those hills were that they went on. All right, so here are Mason and Dixon. You can see they were from England, of course, and they hadn't known each other before they were matched up to do this. They had had one little surveying trip together, which I can't go into because I've forgotten it. But they ended up being hired to come and finally figure out this complex puzzle. And so they arrived in Philadelphia and finally gathered up the crew that they needed to do the line west 15 miles south, or no, they have to do the due west from the southernmost house in Philadelphia. And so they had a crew to get them there, and they had to take all their sensitive equipment and so forth. And then once they started actually doing the due west line that we went on, they had a crew of about 40 people in their entourage. because they needed teamsters, they needed, I guess, cooks. They probably took along some livestock, I'm not sure about that, but they had to have meat. Did they have chickens? David, do you know that? Did they have animals? Did they take along, or cows? Anything like
Probably.
that? I know, that's what I was saying, you know, when you think they had.
It just amazes me how they were able to.
Oh, I know, it's just astonishing. But
It's
in the,
incredible.
George Johnson's History of Cecil County, it's a fascinating book, it's online if you ever wanna read it. And he describes the impression that this crew made in Cecil County. First of all, they were acting very weird. They stayed up all night looking up at the stars, and they were very fond of the peach brandy, and they had a pet bear. And I just had this pet bear story authenticated by a woman at the museum in Newark, Delaware, and she said there's a record. They stayed at the tavern there where Deer Park Tavern is in Newark, and there's a record that they had their pet bear there. So they were a jolly crew, and they lingered long in the northeast corner of the county, which is where the starting point is, of course. But the other thing is this crew they kept coming back. They'd start the survey, they went to 10 miles or so, they would return to double check, make sure their marks were all correct before they continued on. And so they kept going back and forth, and even at the very end of the survey, they kept coming back through Cecil County and Chester County because they kept having to meet with their, the authorities who were telling them they were doing fine or to continue on, give them their money or whatever they needed. So they kept coming back to meet in Newcastle and Philadelphia and places like that. So they made lots of trips through our part of the world. And these tools, as I say, David will explain them all to you. It's beyond my comprehension. How a mind can create, it's just too hard. But they measured the whole world with these chains. That's also very hard to believe. The Gunter's chain was 66 feet long. It had 100 links, so each link was 7.92 inches. It took 80 chains to measure a mile, and 10 square chains equaled an acre. So they went back and forth across 231 miles, taking the chain out, sticking a stake in the ground, doing the chain again, and of course the surveyor is here he has the circumferrator where he's telling them, go this way, that way, go straight ahead, and you put the chain out again, put down another stake, until you have done 80 chains and made your mile. And then you put your marker down. Plus, these are lineal miles, is that what you call it? Rather than, you're not following the terrain. You are trying to get a measure of aerial miles. So they have to, I guess the chain, they had a bubble level kind of thing, right? Is that what kept it?
Yeah, you hit the mountainous areas, it becomes very difficult.
I'm sure it does, if you don't have an
gotta do a lot of
airplane.
calculating. You gotta go from state plane coordinates down to regular ground coordinates. And there's, certain, but back in those days, for them to know, it's just,
I know,
it just blows
as I
me away.
said, it boggles my mind. Can you imagine? I couldn't even, I guess I could do 80 chains in one day, would do 1 mile, but they did things so quickly. And the other thing is this is part of their journals. Look at all the calculations and all the stuff that I'm doing. So it's just astonishing to me it happened. And by the way, you're all familiar with this, right?
Clear the way.
Oh, I'm in the way. What?
No, they had to clear the way.
Oh, yes, I forgot the most important thing.
Yeah.
Part of their crewmen were axemen who had to cut down all the trees, 8-yard swath, 24 feet, clear all the land in front so that they could, site their places. Can you imagine cutting that? This is virgin hardwood forest with axes. And I guess all the people who lived in the neighborhood were happy to have the lumber felled for them, and they built things. But it's just astonishing. Plus, we know from having been there that the terrain was not always kind. But that was the main thing. They had to clear the 8-foot swath, 8-yard swath, and was like building a superhighway, can you imagine? And I'm sure there was, I think Johnston mentions that there were still traces of that straight line right across the top of the county, 100 years later. You can still tell it was there. It's just, thank you for reminding me, that's the most amazing part to me. Not even with saws, but axes. All right, back to the local area. So this is your one claim to fame here in Chester County. Supposedly, have you heard of the ticking tomb?
Yes.
Everybody, I guess. I had heard of it, but of course when you read the supposed explanation, it's totally absurd. But supposedly this child named Fithian Minuet, he must have been descended from Peter Minuet of New York, was playing near Mason's tent, and he wandered in, and he swallowed one of Mason's miniature chronometer, which ticked inside him for the rest of his life, and continues to tick at the grave. I have never found the grave. Well, there's a grave. Now that I can see it, it's flat on the ground. I will go put my ear against it, but anyhow, it doesn't seem likely, but it sticks. Have you heard it's something about he married his wife, and she said the ticking was like a testimony to their never-ending love. Anyhow, pure nonsense, but that London Track Church is not very close to the border.
Now, I've heard that his mother was a fish seller, so when he said that they bring their own livestock, I guess people came to sell their goods to the cooks.
I see. Oh, so there's a reason for him to be in the tent.
That's why the young boy was there.
Yeah. Well, he ended up being a clockmaker, said the myth. Yes, so she was a provisioner. So I guess the local people did supply food. Now, what we were after were the markers. And I don't know where these two markers with the very clear M and the very clear P and the fluting and the little tiny bit of peak in the top. I don't know where these markers are, but we sure didn't see anything like that. Our markers were like the ones over on the right-hand side. And that's one of the not so bad ones. There are worse. So our goal was to find 23 of these.
What are they made out of?
Oh, we'll get yeah. And this, of course, is, again, the glorious crown stones. Every 5 miles, there's a crown stone with the Calvert coat of arms on the left and the Penn coat of arms on the right. But again, the ones we saw were not quite so clearly defined. Some of these markers got left behind. They weren't, except it wouldn't have worked because by the time they stopped working, they were outside of Maryland. So I don't know why these spare ones are here. So anyhow, when they ran into the Indian troubles, they had some markers stored away in Fort Frederick out in Washington County in Maryland. Yes, David?
They stopped putting monuments in as soon as they hit the mountains.
Oh, I see. So these were...
And they stored almost 150, 160 monuments at Fort Frederick.
Oh, okay.
When they did the resurvey, and right around 1900, they took those, still there at Fort Frederick, they took all those original monuments and replaced ones that were missing with those monuments. And put the ones in the mountains areas.
Oh, they did, okay.
Because once they hit the mountains, there was no way they could go over those mountains with wagons and stuff with monuments. They had to leave them all behind. All they did was put posts in the ground. From then on, they just posted it.
We stuck to Cecil County, so thank God David's here. He can tell you the whole. But the thing is that these monuments, these markers, were made in England. They come from, the original ones came from, are made of Portland limestone, an island off the coast of Devonshire. And it's wonderfully workable stone. And yet it's quite durable, as you can see from the examples I've left. St. Paul's Cathedral in London, on the left, is one of the buildings made of Portland stone. And the UN building in New York was also built up. But remember, they had to put an order in, make me 230 markers, or 280 markers, however far it is, with an M on one side, a P on the other side. And define it. They weigh about 400 to 500 pounds each. And they started out about this tall, right, David?
Yeah.
4 feet tall or so. And I guess they're still 4 feet tall, it's just that you don't see the 4 feet anymore. All right, so that's where they came from, they had to ship them over. For the first load, I think, arrived in a Delaware port, I've forgotten which town it was in. Came up into, up through the Chesapeake Bay into Delaware. And then later shipments were made in Baltimore, to Baltimore and so forth. But they had to haul them in by horse or ox or something. It's just astonishing the logistics of this.
No Amazon.
No what?
No Amazon.
No Amazon, and how do you send your order? It takes weeks and weeks to get them over there, so, anyhow. Think of this, and it all happened in a few years, 3 years. These are replacement stones in Cecil County. A few had to be replaced. They were gone, but only 2, right? Or 3. Well, when you get your talk, you'll know. Now, there are 2 of these in Cecil County that are not Mason-Dixon markers. They're on the line, but they are poured concrete monuments, probably put in about 1920 or so, when people started taking road trips, and you'll see where they're located. Sister is doing the whole rest of the program here. So, you're rid of me. Edith will stand up and she's going to. Now the real fun part.
So, how did I find them? Lots of times, well, the first ones I looked for were through geocaching and letterboxing. And then when I got really serious, then I used this website, Mason-Dixon Line Preservation P, what's the other P for? What? Partnership, okay, .org. And on that, all the Mason-Dixon markers are marked on a map with all these little dots, and you can click on the little dots and they tell you where the coordinates of where it is. This is what it shows you, the directions of how to get there, the condition, and this was from 1991, okay? So what I did was I got the latitude and longitude, I put it in my phone on GPS, and it took me a while to really rely on it, but I finally started relying on the GPS after we found the one in the Weaver Field, but anyhow, so this was great information of how to find them, and okay, now we're doing the markers before the first mile, okay, so, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what am I doing here? Okay,
This is
and we changed it
Didn't
for
tell her
you.
about it.
Okay, all right. So, at the Harlan's farm, 15 miles due south of Philadelphia. Okay, so what's the next thing look like? Okay, the Stargazer Stone. That's one that's where they started. They went from Philadelphia over, and the Stargazer Stone, that's where they started the line down 15 miles to the Arcs, the postmark west. Okay, so this is up off of what's Embryville. Okay, Embryville, and there's a really nice park near it, and the actual spot is in the middle of the road. So they've made the stone, but they made a monument over in somebody's front yard, and so we went over and I went over and looked at it. I don't think you've been over there, have you?
Yeah.
So, okay. Let me see. So then they went down. I don't know. You want to tell about this, Emily? I don't know what you put in here.
This is their notation in their journal about finding the point due south of that Embryville Stargazer's place, where they were sure they were definitely west of the lowest point in Philadelphia. Then they had to go 15 miles down to the
Postmark West. This is in the middle of a park, of the White Clay Creek Park in, let's see, I can't remember the parking lot, but off of near Possum Park Road. Okay. And I found this one geocaching with my reluctant husband one day. So we went and saw that. And I've been there several times since. And it's a fairly easy walk in the park, and it's the trail is really well marked, so if you wanna go see this, you could find. So this is where they came down the 15 miles and then started
And
over.
that was the point where they always came back and checked to make sure that was, you know, absolutely due west from there. That was their lodestone point.
Okay, so what did you put here?
That's
That,
the tri-strip state marker.
oh, okay, so this is, okay.
This is the
So
quarter
then
of
they
the
went,
states.
oh, this is the tri-state marker, and from
There's
1931?
only 2 states then.
Okay, all right. The tri-state marker was a birthday celebration find in 2013. We found this with geocaching in the middle. This was before, now there's a trail going to it in White Clay Creek State Park. And this was before there were any trails to it. So I had to geocache, and of course when you get trees over top, it's hard to, for your GPS to be accurate. But we wandered around the woods for a while and finally found it. And when they finally put in a trail in 2015, I went back, I did a hike with the trail club, Wilmington Trail Club, and hiked to the marker, and they had a big celebration. And the guy who owned the property next door was so upset about this happening that he mowed the whole time, so you couldn't hear any of the speakers speaking. So he had a real issue with it. I don't know if he still lives there or not.
Well, the
So
thing is that this is almost visible if you're driving from Newark up 286. It's practically visible. I mean,
no,
896. I get my numbers mixed. 896. It's
You
just
can't
over a
see it.
field. You can't see it,
Okay,
but
you can't
it's
see
just through a field. And yet to get there, you have to park way over here, wander through 2 miles of trees to get there. If only you could walk through that field, you'd be right there.
So the tri-state marker was the beginning of the east-west line, okay? Whoops. So this is the original timeline for Mason and Dixon to do the survey, and they started April 10th, and they ended May 11th, right?
And that included
And-
going back a time or two to
Okay.
resurvey.
And our timeline was from April 2012 to March 2023. It took us a little longer. Of course, we were sort of the fair weather hikers. Of course, with all the undergrowth and everything, we only went between probably fall and spring of every year to find the markers. So, and let's see. The very first marker, okay, the dotted line is the state line, is the Mason-Dixon line, okay? And the marker number 1, the first one after the tri-state marker, is on Elbow Lane, okay? It's very easy to see. You can drive right past it. It's on the side of the road, okay? Let's see. It was in, it has the M and the P on it, of course, you can sort of see them. And okay, those are clear. And there was a survey between 1901 and 1903, and that survey, they stabilized the markers, they replaced markers, and they also put concrete around the bottoms of the markers. And this one has the date of 1901 on the concrete around the bottom of the marker. Okay. So if you want to see that one, it's easy to see.
Just drive by.
Just drive by, or you could, there's not too much traffic, don't get hurt, but you could stop and probably get out and look at it. Marker number 2, I've been to several times. Marker number 2 is in the Fair Hill Natural Resource Area. To see it, you would park in the North Appleton parking lot and go north on the road walking, and when it starts to curve, just keep going down in the field, okay? And it's just in the middle of a field. It's a little mound now, there's not much there, okay? And there's the marker, the M and the P. Emily has taken, many hikes there with the group, the Forgotten Fair Hill groups that she takes.
By the way, it's the farm machinery that does all that damage to it, you know, if you're mowing out there in your hayfield, there's another chunk.
Okay. Number 3, I found, found April 14th, 2012, and that is, if you can see the terrain sort of, it's in the middle of the woods. That's another one that I found with geocaching, and that's before the trails were upgraded, let's say, to get to it. We had to really bushwhack sort of to get to see it. But now that it has trail to it, you can get back there if you're a hardy hiker. So, but it has.
It's quite a hike,
Yeah.
you know, unless you're a couple miles from the.
When we found it, there was a lot of dense underbrush and everything.
Yeah, it's just a mess.
Yes.
Totally forgotten.
All right. And then the next one is a crown stone, number 5. Well, not the next one. I should say this. This is in the order we found them, not in order that they exist. Okay. So, all right. So then number 5. I don't know. I think we went to the Louisville post office and asked where the marker was in Louisville. And they said, oh, down behind Crownstone Feed Store, of course, Crownstone Feed Store. And we went and Pat, what's his last name? Pal Derborough.
Yeah.
Okay, Pal Derborough said, oh, come on down. It's down in the field. So this one, it has to be dug up. Okay, it's down in the ground from natural erosion and everything. So he dug around it, and it's in pretty good condition. And you can see the Penn and the Calvert signs on it. And the day after we found it, or a couple days later, oh, you took that one out. Yeah, I was going to show Annalea because I was just going to show how long it took. I had a picture in here of my granddaughter when she was 10, and then later on she's 21 when I'm still farming them. So, okay, sorry, that's all right. I was going to just as a comparison. Okay, number 4 is one that's also in the middle of a field. You can see that it's in the middle of the field in okay, Fairhill Natural Resource Area. It is a walk to get to it because there's no parking place to park near it. Now that the new park is put in by Pennsylvania, it's easier to get to because you can park along Circusville Road and go through the field, I think, right? Okay.
Give you a ticket.
I don't know. So park by the side of the road, whoever goes in there. So anyhow, so that's the M and the P. And I guess, oh, and there's Annalea too, okay. That's my youngest granddaughter. And we were on Park Quest, so it was we found it through Park Quest. Number 10, okay. Now, this is where I started to get serious and started to use that website, the Mason-Dixon Line Preservation website. And so number 10, I think I'd seen before, but anyhow, it is along 272, and it is a crown stone, or was a crown stone, okay? And it is a replacement. It has a sad story. This is the saddest story of all the, well, no, I guess the quarry's the saddest story. But anyhow. All right, this was a crown stone. Okay, so this poor beleaguered marker was close to the driveway of apartments, and there's a church near it too. And you can, it's very easy to get to. You can go down off of 272. But in 1977, it was knocked off its base, the original marker, and in a car accident. And then it was vandalized. And so the Cecil County Historical Society asked Ed Plumstead, who was the owner of Pumpkin Park Zoo, to take it and, or pick it up, and it was put in the Calvert Meeting House the Quaker Meeting House by the fireplace. So it sat there for a while, and Mr. Plumstead then took it out and put it in his zoo. I'm not sure what his plan was. Okay, so it was put at the zoo, and currently, that was in 2000, it went to the zoo, and currently it's in the zoo, okay? And if you wanna see it, you have to pay to go in the zoo. This is the replacement. This is what's there now, okay? And it was replaced in 2003, and, that's the fake marker, that's not the real marker that's there, okay? And here it is in the zoo, okay? So, in front of the reptile house, the burned out reptile house. So, I have implored some people to try to do something about it, but nothing's happened, that it needs to be put in a proper place. And this is its the replacement got hit this winter and got knocked over. So the poor thing, it's had a very hard life.
But nobody, we've contacted people and other people have contacted and nobody claims the thing, Who will sit it back up again and put it where it belongs? It just sits there.
They need to have somebody, a surveyor come, I think, and survey to make sure it's put in the right place and everything. Dave, yes. So the poor beleaguered stone, so.
You can see that easily too. You can just drive upright and watch it,
Yeah,
look at it,
see
see
it.
around.
Number 6, this one is easy to see. It's on the Patsy DuPont farm, which used to be, that's now owned by Cecil Land Trust. And my brother was the president of Cecil Land Trust, and my daughter-in-law was the executive director, so all I had to do was sort of call and get permission to go on. And Craig, one of the caretakers there, guided us, and you walk along from Little Elk Creek Road, isn't it? Yeah, across the field. Okay, so it's and there's the M on one side, and I showed Craig the technology I was using. So anyhow, so that was easy to find. The next one, number 7, was Pure Luck. This one's off of Woolens Road, which is a little further up the road. You just drive up, and we drove up to this gated horse farm on Woolens Road, and there happened to be a groundskeeper right inside the gate, and we yelled, "Hey, we'd like to come in and look for this Mason-Dixon marker." He said, "Oh, sure," and he unlocked the gate and let us in. The owners weren't there. And so he took us to the stone. It's in a tree line behind the house, and it's just sort of covered up and forgotten. So that's one, just a mound. It's not in very good condition. So, and other people haven't had the luck that we've had. And this
I've been down there at least 10 times. I can never find anybody.
This groundskeeper was very nice, and I think his wife was a member of Forgotten Fair Hill, and so he knew who Emily was. So, and we have Joanne here, okay, who has found all the tangent markers, I think. Okay, she's another.
All the 12 miles.
All the 12 mile, okay. And she's working on doing all the east-west ones, not just a certain county. She's trying to see them all. So she has a huge book.
Plus
If you
the
want to see,
tangent,
Check out her book.
check out her book. Okay. I'm just satisfied with 23. Okay. And there's the poor marker with misshapen. Okay. Number 8. Okay. Number 8 is a replacement. It has a little story. Okay. So number 8. Is on property owned by someone my granddaughter knew, and so there's Annalea now, all grown up, and it was in a tree line, okay, behind the grooming business. It was once part of Warren Johnson's turkey farm in that area, and the top was missing. And in 1990s, and the base was located in 1997, and the replacement was made in 2003. And when I was picking blueberries at Warren's niece's place, I said, do you know anything about the marker, blah, 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 this last year? And she said, oh, there's a picture of it on the Warren's book. Oh, okay. So I had not known that. And then there was a little story about it possibly being the marker that marked, but I'm not gonna go into that, okay? Into Mason-Dixon's marker, but it's not, okay?
That one really
So-
was beaten up.
That was, okay? And it's easy to find that one if you know somebody. Number 9, okay. Number 9 is in the middle of a field, okay? And it's on a farm once owned by my first cousin, Harmon Weaver. Harmon Weaver, okay? My father was the youngest of 15 children, and so I'm the youngest of that generation, okay? So I didn't know many of my first cousins. I think I met Harmon maybe once or something, but anyhow.
He's older than our father.
Yes, and it's the farm is currently owned by Amish, the Kaufmans, the Amish, but part of it's still owned by Harmon's daughter, Lois. And my mother would always tell me a story about there was a Mason-Dixon marker in the barn at the Weaver's house, and I assumed it was a real Mason-Dixon marker was in the middle of the barn. I didn't know, and I didn't care back then, you know, when she was telling me this story. So, so we stopped by and knocked on, and we sat in the car, and I knocked on the door, and Lois was home, and so we had a nice talk with Lois, and she said she didn't ever remember a marker being in the field, and it's in the field across from her house. But she said, we sort of gazed across at the field and said, where would the marker be? But there was a marker painted in the barn, okay, Maryland and Pennsylvania. That's been in the barn, I guess, since forever. And she said the cows would come in to be milked on the Maryland side and go out on the Pennsylvania side. Okay. And then we did, after we visited with Lois and thinking we'll never find the marker there, we went down to visit my parents' first house, or first farm after they were married, that they lived, and it's owned by Amish now, down in Mount Olivet, right? Okay.
You pressed the wrong way. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So, and then number 11 was, it's on private property, but it's down a lane, on the side of the lane, and so we drove down the lane. We weren't quite sure what was in that building down there, and I said, oh, we'll be okay, and we sat in the car while I got out.
For her to be shot, not me.
So, and I took pictures of it, and this is it. Okay, this is off of Chanley Road, or McCrory, whichever. It changes names.
Chanley in Maryland and
McCrory.
McCrory.
Okay. Okay, number 12 was this poor, pitiful, this is on State Line Road.
The saddest of all.
You can drive up right on State Line Road, and there it is, sitting in the middle of a puddle or on the side. It's hit by, road equipment and everything else, but it's
Covered with glitter and mud
and everything else. Yeah,
weeds in the summer.
yeah, so.
No one cares.
And, there it is, by a rivulet. Okay. All right, number 14. Okay, this was probably the hardest one to find to me, okay? Oh, not the hardest to find, I guess the Weaver one was harder to find. So, number 14 is at the Sprout Farm. And I contacted a family member to see if to gain permission to access. And she said it was fine. She didn't know, she had never seen it before. Her brothers had seen it, but she couldn't tell me exactly where it was. So we drove to the non-Sprout house, got permission to park there, at least check to make sure we wouldn't be, shot or hauled away. And due to my inability to know how much of 4/10 of a mile is, And, I have a hard time with how many yards or whatever it is. The first day we went down the, closed road and turned into the woods too early. The description said it was 0.4 miles to the corner of the woods, walk into the woods over large boulders, 100 feet to stone, and it was in a wooded lowland. Well, were those boulders? No, I don't think so. But so we didn't find anything the first day. I called Susan again and she said, well, yeah, you can go back, it doesn't matter. So these were the boulders they were talking about. And it was probably the most remote one that we had to, the boulders might have been from a quarry at one time. They did quarry this farm to build a road, but we aren't sure why all these big boulders were by the side of the side. So we had to go down over the boulders and down into the woods. It was behind a tree, and there was an orange flag there, so I'm not sure why that
Somebody
was
else
there.
put it there.
Yeah, somebody else did put it there. So, and that was, it's strange that this was in such bad condition being where it was. I don't know why it was
No
just.
farm equipment down there, I can
I
assure
don't
you.
know. So, anyhow. Oh, and we were so happy to find it. Number 13, this was fairly easy to find. It's behind Ag Industrial in Rising Sun. And so all we had to do was walk by the big machinery. Well, we asked permission, we went in, and this is the owner's son, and he led us back to it. It's well kept, they have it marked off, and so it has a nice N and P and the fluting on it too.
Do you know when you found that one?
Oh,
Yeah, back up, I should say.
March 25th,
Okay.
2022.
I found it in October, and when we went into my son and my grandson were with me, we went into the building and said, hey, I think you have this, and he said, yeah, it's out back. He said, we had two really nice older ladies here.
Older lady.
But, you know, and
Compared to him.
now I know you. It's so funny. So,
Yes.
so I
Well,
dismissed them.
You know, our family's done business there, you know, the
Okay.
farm
Mhm.
and everything. And my brother worked there for
Oh,
a period of
wow,
time.
okay.
Yeah, so we did have some, okay, so that was 13. And now, and this, when I asked originally, they said, oh, there's a marker down at Silmar, but this is, again, is one of the motor markers, okay? Number 15 is, I had knee surgery fast approaching, okay? This was in January 31st. I said, I have to get this done before I have my knee surgery, replacement, okay? And so I said, oh, let's get going. And so we had an appointment, we did several in this one day. So this one we did, and it was along a tree line in the middle of a field. We stopped at a house and there was a large parking area and a house beside it that didn't, wasn't part of the parking area. But anyhow, I went to the house while I only sat in the car and knocked on the door, and they only had one dog there. And so, and the lady said, oh, I don't think those people will mind if you walk on their property, it's just farmland, blah, 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 blah. So we started in one direction because I was not depending on my GPS on my phone, I should have. And then we abruptly turned, and Emily said, I think it should be over that way. She has a wonderful sense of direction. And so this was in a fence line, and it's a crown stone, so it has but somebody painted the Maryland side. I'm not sure why, but anyhow. And
Wanted to see what it
So,
would look like.
I guess, yeah, so,
'Cause I went in from the other side.
oh, you
And I
did?
met that gentleman.
Oh, you did? Okay, and he said he wanted.
He said, I bet I wasn't supposed to do that,
that,
was
no.
I? And I said, well, we kinda like you not to.
So, okay, then, let's see. Oh, this one, my brother, is another one that, was able to help us on this one because the, Cecil Land Trust owned the right of way to Penn Woods, which is behind this one. And, I thought I might meet an old kindergarten student because when I looked up on the deed search, for the state of Maryland, it was one of my old kindergarten students that owned the property. And I thought this one would be easy to find, but then I found out my brother, could take us back to the road that goes back here. And somebody was gonna build a home back there at one time, so there is a road and some old rubble from Philadelphia, I think, with buildings being torn down. And so there's this strange monument on the way back there, and then this is the marker that's there. So that was fairly easy to find because of knowing my brother, so. Let's see, number 17, only 5 days to surgery. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Okay. Let's see. This one,
She lived a lot.
okay. Let's see. This one was on private property. We went back a long lane that was lined with like abandoned cars and things. I wasn't quite sure what I was gonna find back here. So this one is in the woods, but we went back, Emily sat in the car and I went up to the house. And there were 3 dogs and 3 generations of people. So the older lady said, oh sure, it's back here in the woods. And that's about as much as she told me. She said, don't go this way, go around that way. And we took our chances, and we took the hardest route into the woods, of course. So this was in the woods, and it's in a valley 50 feet downhill near a 48-inch poplar tree. So it took us a little while to find this. It was behind the tree, and it's not in very good condition either.
Really obscure, really hard to see because it's right by the base of the tree.
Okay. All right, number 20. Number 20 was at the Wildcat Generating Plant on 222, okay, if you know where that is, okay. It's Old Dominion Electric. And since all the other surveys had been done, this was a new facility, so there was no way of knowing how to get into it then. So I called the Wildcat Generating Plant, and I told them what I wanted to do, and the guy I talked to had no idea what I was talking about. And so he said, let me talk to someone, I'll get back to you. So he did call me back, and they said, he said, sure, yeah, it's here. And I had to call the security people, and it ended up a security person took us back to this one. But we had to make an appointment, and so we made the appointment was on another day, it rained, so blah, blah, blah. So they have made a little pathway back to it. It's, there are benches there to sit down, and this is a crown stone. Now it says on the previous survey that this was reset, and maybe something's, let's see, maybe something is facing east that should be not, okay? Anyhow, so that one is being well taken care of, but you have to make an appointment to go back there. I think they do class trips, they said, so. Number 21 was up the road, let's see, okay. We traveled north on Old Mill Road into Pennsylvania, and when you looked at it, there was no easy way to access this one. And we didn't realize who owned the property or anything. So fortunately for us, Emily had expert information about the family, genealogy, and where everybody lived. And so it ended up that one of the Graybeals, who are related to us, owned the land and owned the farm. We stopped by and met Byron. I'd never met Byron before. And Byron has a lot of cows, and the farm is now run by the same people that run the old Kilby farm, okay? So he said, sure, it's up there. He pointed where it was. You can park by the road, you can go across the land. And this one is at 30 feet from the edge of the woods, and it's along a power line, and you have to turn and go into the woods. And while we were there, we did visit go by our great-grandfather while he went in Osborne's farm that he purchased when he left Hartford County. So
that's about the longest walk, isn't it?
yeah, that's the longest
to get
walk.
to it, really, from any road.
And and that one still had some fluting and M&P, and that's the Conowingo Creek, I think, right?
Yes.
And so that was a long walk, okay. Now, let's see.
Get close to the end.
close to the end, quick, I'm sorry, okay. Number 22 is the easiest and the most disappointing. It's in the middle or in the corner of Grub and Pilot Town Road, I think. And by the side of the road, it's a replacement. I don't think it's even in the right place, I'm not quite sure.
I think it was
It
originally
was
on the other
moved.
side down
Yeah,
the ditch.
it has an MP.
It was
Okay.
replaced in 1901 or so, rather than more recently.
Okay, number 23, this is the last one, not the last one we went to, but the last one before you fall into the Susquehanna. And it's in a wooded area at the edge of the land, you know, and so in the information I had from 1991, it gave the name of the owner of the land and a phone number, and it was a Hassler, George Hassler, and George Hassler at one time owned Ferguson and Hassler in Quarryville. He died, he was dead though, and Emily and I both worked at Hilltop Farm, where his ex-wife Jill Hassler ran the farm, and so we had a Hassler connection, and so it was familiar. So when we went, the first day we stopped. I said, okay, when we went in, it's right at the river, and so there was a place down here, and then the Hassler place was up here, but I wasn't sure if the Hassler still owned it. I had no way of finding that out. I hated to drive up here where I might get caught with a gun in my face and not have any place to turn around. So I drove down to the owner here, and I asked, well, I went to the door. Emily sat in the car, and I went and knocked on the door. And the door was slightly open, but then two dogs opened the door, and then another dog came around that way. So I went back to the car, but a man did come out, and he said, he was very nice, and I said, do the Hasslers still own the property up there? He said yes, and they would be fine with you going up there. So we went up there, and we went up there, and I knocked on doors, and nobody came out, and we sat in the car. And then I wrote a little note saying who I was and what I wanted and my phone number, and left it under a rock on a table by the door, okay? And so then we went off, and to the same day, because time was getting short, we stopped at number 19. If you look at this, it's in the middle of a quarry, okay? And what happened back in December, there was a show on the Maryland Public Television about the Mason-Dixon markers, and one they highlighted was this one in the quarry. And when I knew I needed to find it, because it said it was going to be moved at some point, I said, I called the quarry, and the lady at the scale house had no clue what I was talking about. I said, you have a Mason-Dixon marker in the middle of the quarry somewhere. No, I didn't know. I said, is there an old-time worker there that might know something? No. And so I thought, oh well. And so I said to Emily, let's just stop and see. Maybe I can find something. So we stopped at the quarry, and I went to the scale house, and it was the same lady I talked to on the phone. And she said, look, let me call Jay. Was it Jay?
I think Jay.
Jay. So she called Jay. Jay ran up there. He was the superintendent of the quarry. And he said, sure, I know where it is. And he said, come on. And so we hopped in his truck, and he took us out to sea in the middle of the quarry. This 4 marker lying there in the middle of the quarry, all the trucks going around and everything.
He had said that they didn't know it was there for the longest time. They drove over it and everything.
So this is us, but he so kindly, then he said, he took us down into the quarry.
It's like going
And
to the center
he
of
took
the
us
earth.
for a tour of the quarry, and they quarry serpentine rock there. So he took us all around. There was, and if you look at the arrow, it shows you where the marker is compared to where the quarry is. But since then, they have come in and they did remove it. Jay did not know, he deleted his pictures of when it was done, and he didn't know where they took it, but I assume it was a geological survey that got it, and it's somewhere in Maryland, historical something, okay?
So we're the last living people who have seen it.
Yes, so, okay, so then, we went back, the lady called me back, Mrs. Roth called me back, and, we made an appointment to go Sunday to see number 23, she was very gracious, they took us into the house, we had tea and crumpets, no, okay, but we talked, we had many connections with the Hasslers and the horses and everything else, and so, I can't remember his name, Kirk, took us out back to see the number 23 overlooking, it's beautiful, overlooking the Susquehanna, and this is the marker that was there, okay. Then, number 9, which I thought I'd never see, we went, the day before, the second visit I took was the day before my surgery, and I said, I need to stop and talk to this Amish farmer to see if I can get on here and find, would he mind if I did it? So, Mr. Kaufman, I can't remember which one he was, said, sure, come back anytime you want. So I walked out in the field and looked around, and this is what you see in the field. There's no marker, there's nothing. I did have my phone trying to figure out something, but this is what I saw on my second visit. And this is about where I thought it might be, and this is what happened the next day. So, from January, February, okay, a month later, I said, we had to get there before he planted crops, okay? So we went back, March the 1st, Emily with the shovel, and, because I couldn't dig.
I was nearly 79 at the time.
Well, and I had a knee replacement, so I couldn't dig. So I said, here with my GPS, let's look. How about here? And she started digging, and that wasn't quite right. So I said, how about here? And she dug, and
Oh, well, I was ready to give up. We did 2 or 3 tries, and I was ready to give up.
and she dug right there.
And then I hit something that felt different.
And this is what you see, the video, we have a video.
Yeah.
Shows you the expanse of the field. Okay.
Needle in a haystack.
And this is, yes, a needle in a haystack, and there it is. But it's not the marker is missing, it's the base of the marker.
This much of the marker.
And so Emily dug as much as she wanted to, and then, or as much as she could. And then she said, okay, that's enough. And so I wasn't quite satisfied. So I went home, I said to my husband, Mel, get some tools. We're going back the next day and we're gonna dig a little further. So Mel went back, the final dig, and dug around until you could see the concrete base that they poured in 1901, 2, 3, whatever. And who knows whatever happened to the top of the marker. Probably those weavers got sick of plowing around the marker and just knocked it off.
It might have happened before 1945.
Well, maybe. So, it was there in 1903, or whatever, 1901. So, and then we covered it up so it would look like, so the farmer could farm, and I'm not sure. And the very last one we found was at the Boy Scout camp, because it was a pretty rough walk for me with my replaced knee after a month, but anyhow. So that one is in a cage in the Boy Scout camp, and it's to protect it. I think it's misaligned too, I think they said, but it's near the octarara. And this is us at number 23. Yay! Okay. There's some extra reading if you want to learn any more about it. Okay.
And Joanne she has her book over there. I'm sure she'll share.
And Emily, what was this?
Oh, no, those are the slides I took out.
Oh,
Stop.
okay.
You're
Oh,
finished.
stop.
No more. I made it shorter, believe it or not.
And not long ago, in I can't remember what month this was, there was an article in Popular Mechanics about the Mason-Dixon marker. So, okay, all right, that's it. We're finished. see the condition they're in and that they're going to be lost to.
How come somebody can haul one away if nobody owns them or takes care of them?
I don't know.
Just like
They
you
have
buy-
400 pounds, go ahead. Well, you know, and why, and the zoo owner is objecting to
Well, I mean,
people
like a
taking
quarry,
it.
and you said it just sort of vaporizes.
Oh, no, somebody official has said it.
Who's not official?
Well, I mean, maybe, I don't know, does David know who took the one in the quarry?
What was that?
Do you know who took the one in the quarry?
No, I do not, I didn't know they had removed that.
Yeah, they have. They were discussing what to do with it. The options were to put it in another place along the line outside of the, or put it in like the historical society and, you know, as a monument thing or something, I don't know.
She had a question.
Oh, yes.
Who wrote the history of Cecil County, Maryland, and how do we access it online?
It's George Johnston.
Okay.
It's published in 1881. It's on the, you can find it in multiple places online, and, you know, the full text or the full book. It's just a fabulous history. It's amazing how fun it is to read, how absolutely accurate it is for, you know, he did it all in the dark basement of the courthouse, you know, and, it's Internet Archive or something like that. So just Google it, you'll find it.
Okay, thank you.
Highly recommend it for many reasons.
Any other questions?
Who paid for the survey?
Oh, the two,
Both states?
yeah, the providers.
There was an agreement.
Yes, some sort of agreement, and that's why they had to keep coming back and getting, you know, approved for things that they've done. But David's the one, David and Joanne know this historical thing.
The thing about the logistics is interesting. You're saying it took 3 years. I bet you couldn't even get those stones made in 3 years today.
I don't know how they did it.
All those stones, hundreds and hundreds of them.
And you're sending messages back and forth, send more.
Anybody else have any questions?
I just have a comment. I used to work for the Chester County GIS department, and our team went out with their GPS equipment where they triangulate between 3 satellites, and they did this, and they came back and plotted it, and they said that Mason and Dixon were within 18 inches
I
of being
know, I know.
perfectly correct.
It's just the most exciting thing. Now, the thing is why, what township are you in?
Here,
Oh, you're
I
in
live
Flint.
here, but
Because
I
I
worked
want
in
somebody
Washington.
from, I guess it would be East Nottingham Township or whatever, to go put that stone back where it belongs. Well, I contacted the Maryland people, and they, you know, the county, Cecil County, they don't quite know, I mean, you know, it's not ours, what do we do? You know, it's just lying there waiting to be tilted back up again.
So what was the distance between the markers and were they equidistant?
Yeah, 1 mile.
1 mile.
They started out equidistant, but then, for instance, the
One
one.
air mile.
Yes, 1 air mile, not. Because that was one of the things they had to settle when they were arguing, should it be land miles or air miles?
That's the point 15 miles south from Philly.
Okay, well, the Stargazer stone is in Embryville, and they measured from that, I don't know how they figured out where, you know, looking at the stars. they
Yes.
figured it. 15 miles down is where the postmarked west is, and that's where they started across east to west.
The Stargazer stone, is it on Stargazer Road?
Yes,
Okay, I can buy that
Yeah.
myself.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah,
Is it
and
Ocean
it's-
Road?
so there's a place to park, there's a maintenance yard or something, like a little further down the road on the left, and you can go across into that preserve thing, there's a preserve there, and on there, and but you can also walk back from that maintenance area over to the yard, the people's yard where it is, okay? But the actual place was in the middle of the road at the house that's on the corner, that stone house that's on the corner. Okay, I think there might be a marker in the middle of the road.
There is, and then there's also one right up at the bank
Yeah.
that the Surveyors Historical Society put there in
In the garden.
73.
Yeah,
No, 93.
yeah, there's one on the bank, one in the middle of the road, and then the memorial is down in somebody's yard.
But that would be on Stargazer Road?
Yes, it is. Mhm.
Yeah, that's one. You wasn't sure that was right.
Yeah, it's right there, yeah. Is that Embry District?
I don't, I started on 166, they changed name in between there, or I guess.
That's a beautiful building.
It's nicer.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, you are welcome.
Oh, you're.